candidates up and down the ballot. We have to build from the bottom up.
We don't have you as part of the revolution. We can't run elections and we can't create change.
They don't do it alone. They don't do it with billionaires funding their campaigns. They do it with people power. What's the solution? Our revolution!
We are going to keep knocking on doors. We are going to keep our Congress members accountable and make sure they represent our interests.
Wonderful. I'd like to pass it to our host of the show, a very dear friend of mine, Christy Lara. Christy?
Hey guys, so you can see that video. We're going to upload it to our YouTube as well as our Facebook. For those that are joining us on Facebook, welcome. Those that are on Zoom, thank you for tuning in through Zoom. We also encourage everyone to use the chat to get to know each other and discuss what topics and what issues we're organizing on across the state, as well as what campaigns we're working on to help progressives win in our state. My name is Christy Lara. I'm a co-organizer along with Clayton Tucker here in Texas. And we plan to build and help grow the progressive voice here in Texas. These monthly calls are a way for us to connect with each other. Even though Bernie's campaign is suspended, we still have so much work to do, and that's why it's good to see amazing progressives running for office. What you need to know tonight is that the candidates we have, they are vetted to be progressives. They support Medicare for all, health care for all. They support a living wage. They support a Green New Deal, ending mass incarceration. So when you wonder, well, how does our revolution choose who we endorse? We endorse based on the issues. So we hope that helps you work for these candidates, volunteer for them, volunteer with our revolution so that we can turn out the progressive vote, especially in runoff elections where many of our candidates are running against corporate friendly candidates. And we need to be sure that our voice is the strongest voice. We'll discuss that more into the meeting. We have a great lineup, as Clayton has told you. We're also going to touch on some issues as far as voting by mail, what that process will look like, and Jose Garza will join us later on after he discusses his campaign for DA in Austin to help us understand what's going on with the vote by mail issue here in Texas. We don't want to be Wisconsin. We want to be sure as progressives we are the most educated on the issues. So please stay tuned for that. And finally, we'll show you ways you can volunteer and become active in our revolution, Texas, to help build the movement locally in your community. You can see at our revolution, we like to keep our organizing, our activism grounded. And we do that by relying on the issues-based triangle. And what that triangle does is it keeps us focused, it keeps us grounded. And you can see at the very foundation of the triangle is that we work to win on progressive policies. That means that we push issues like a living wage, like the Green New Deal, like ending mass incarceration, as well as an issue so near and dear to all of us, Medicare for all, a universal health care system. Those are the issues that we work to win on. And on another side of the triangle, you'll see that we work to elect progressive champions. So a lot of people refer to our candidates as endorsed candidates, but we refer to them as endorsed champions. And you may wonder, what's the difference? The difference is that our candidates pledge to fight for those issues at the very foundation of the triangle. So we know when we're helping a candidate, we're also helping the issues that are all near and dear to every progressive in Texas. And finally, the third point of our triangle is to build a progressive party. And we intend to do that to make sure that we have a party that represents working families, that represents the 99%, that represents those of us who are, people who aren't wealthy, privileged, well-connected. We want a party that represents working families, not just the corporations and not just the well-connected. And we intend to work and fight for those issues now through until we win, whether it takes a decade or longer. We're going to fight in Texas to build a progressive powerhouse. So those are some of the issues we're fighting for. And Clayton, can you tell us a little bit about what we've actually accomplished in Texas over the past year?
Of course. I mean, we've been working very hard since 2018, 2017, and we really have made some huge strides. So let's talk about, one of the sides of transforming the party, the building a progressive party. We've gotten the Healthy Texas Act added to the party platform, and we like to call Healthy Texas the Medicare for y'all, and y'all means all. And we've been training a lot of progressive delegates for this party convention coming up. We trained 291 folks here in Texas to become delegates. We're super excited about that. As far as electing progressive champions, 52 out of our 98 endorsed candidates have won in the state of Texas. That is 52 new progressives throughout. And this isn't just all Congress people. This is, county commissioners. This is city council. This is what's going to become future drainage district. Person we got down in Fort Bend, Brazoria area. We also have, folks up and down the ballot, because we really believe that we want to build power nationally. We have to build power locally first. And of course, this winning the issues. Between Christy and I, as the two co-organizers, we've traveled around 16,000 miles to go to over 50 events throughout the state of Texas to really convert hearts and minds towards our issues like Medicare for all, really showing them this is why we need it. And that is our work. That is what we do. And we're so excited to have y'all here with us. And without further ado, would like to pass on back to Christy, who will do a quick introduction of one of our good friends.
So yes, we had an amazing year in Texas, just the few months that we've had. And some of us have been working all the way. We never stopped since 2016, right? And so we intend to continue that work. And some of that work has been continued by amazing people in Texas, one of which, not just a hero in Texas, but really a national hero, really an international hero, Jessica Cisneros. She's an immigration and human rights attorney and progressive champion who ran a spirited campaign against the 28th district incumbent Henry Cuellar. She won the endorsement of both Bernie and AOC, so we know she stands with us on the issues. She almost took that seat, y'all. She barely didn't take it. And we know that she was absolutely working for working families and didn't have those wealthy, privileged connections that so many establishment candidates have. Jessica, can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us tonight. You had an amazing race. You're only 26 years old. You had little to no name recognition in the Rio Grande Valley, although that is your home. You ran as a bold progressive, in Texas, which we know can be a difficult place to stand. And you had a ton of powerful forces running against you. And you just barely missed the win by 4 points, upsetting a 15-year incumbent. There were lots of organizers that supported you, I know, in Texas, even here in North Texas. Can you tell us a little bit about your campaign strategy and how you nearly won that seat?
Of course, and thank you so much for inviting me to be able to speak about this, because I think part of us building power involves us talking about, how we can continue building that power and what the lessons learned were. So about our campaign, it's really exciting to even see on the chat a lot of names and of friends that I've made along the campaign trail. And this race really wasn't just about one person. It really was about all our families, us making sure that we are fighting for policy that's actually going to make a difference for ourselves and our loved ones. We ran a really progressive campaign. We weren't shy about what our policy stances were, and a lot of people were shocked about that, because I think being in Texas, right, what people call a red state, they thought that I was the one that was out of touch with my own community. But that's where you trust your own instinct. You trust you know, the instincts of the organizers that you have on the ground. And, you know, I think that's why we had such a big impact, and we're able to empower people because they could see themselves in this campaign. And that was because we really relied on ourselves. And I know it's really easy to get caught up in imposter syndrome, but that's just something we need to push out of the way because this is something bigger than us. So really trying to be the bridge for the disconnect between what is happening locally and what is happening nationally in terms of policy was super important, and using a lot of storytelling. That's part of the culture of the Mexican culture here. Part of the frontera culture is storytelling, and we really relied on that as well. We asked for people who had never been asked before to get involved, and you'd be surprised how many people decided to do that. So I think I saw someone in there say they're shameless for Jessica. That's something we would say all the time, be shameless. Like, you know, the worst thing somebody can tell you is say no, they can't phone bank. And that's when you know you need to keep on asking until they say yes, right? And keep, you know, inviting people and letting them know there's just so many opportunities to get involved.
I mean, it was amazing. You know, I think going down there was so inspiring, seeing your team going into the office. You guys did a great job down there. I know, you know, it can be difficult in Texas. You know, we started the call talking a little bit about the size of Texas, right? And trying to organize, especially politically, on progressive issues. Jessica, and I know that was a huge part of your campaign, right? Reaching into rural areas that often hadn't been touched by a Democrat, much less a progressive Democrat, in decades. We know other candidates have been on the call talking about rural outreach. Mike Siegel has been on the call. I know that you worked to, you know, get to a lot of those areas. Can you tell us a little bit about what that was like for you going into untouched communities?
Yeah, I mean, I've met Mike several times along the campaign trail as well, and we would swap stories, and it's interesting the parallels, you know, in those areas that aren't, you know, connected to major metropolitan areas. I mean, even here in Texas 28, it's almost, you know, it's huge. It's a huge district. There was, you know, no way that we're going to be able to cover everything. Like, well, myself personally, go out there, knock on every single door, right? But even then, like, we try to make sure while we were being smart about where we were going, we also knew that there were so many areas that a lot of people felt that they weren't worth their time to go in there and engage folks. And a lot of it were colonias in our district. For those of y'all that might not be familiar with colonias, they're unincorporated areas in counties where they don't have any basic infrastructure. There's no paved roads, no running water. Many areas don't even have streetlights. And a lot of politicians, I feel, look at those areas and think it's not worth my time going in there because it's probably just, you know, undocumented people or something like that, and they're not going to vote for me. And it's like, they could be farther from the truth. And even if they were, like, there's still people in the community that deserve to be involved as well. And one of the great things about this is that when you go knock on doors here, it's a lot of relational organizing. You don't know the impact that door knock is going to have. You know, the comadres talk to other comadres in the area, you know, the abuelitas, the tias. And you'd be surprised how many volunteers we got from being out there and engaging those communities, because a lot of these folks are surprised. Like, I've been living here for more than, you know, 20 years, and this is the first time somebody came and knocked on my door and asked me for my vote. And that goes a long way with so many people.
I mean, it is inspiring work, and those of us that have done that heavy lift in Texas of reaching out to communities that are often forgotten, right? That's our job, to walk the walk and carry that message to everyone, right? Not just those that are easily reached. And in Texas, you know, we thank not just you, Jessica, but your entire volunteer team for doing that work. So really quick, if we could summarize, we just have a couple of minutes left, Jessica. What did you learn from running this race, and what message would you give to people on this call, especially those who are feeling discouraged about Bernie?
Yeah, I mean, this is something we all know, but I think we need to remind ourselves every so often the work that we're doing is very important and it's working. I don't think with our race, we held a 15-year entrenched incumbent with all the connections in the world, all the money that you can imagine. We held them to 51.8% of the vote, and that is incredible. Because yes, I am a 26-year-old, and this was my first time running, and my parents started off here as farm workers. I'm a working class person. I didn't have any of those connections, but I was lucky enough to meet people along the way that were willing to lend a hand. And the reason why we were so successful was also because we built on what happened in the previous cycles. I don't think anybody would have taken my race seriously if 2018 hadn't happened, where we have progressives in Congress. And I can only imagine what's going to happen after this cycle, and I think right now with everything that's happening with the pandemic, like, yes, our country's in a crisis. And I think like the people that would come into our office, we make it an exercise to ask why we're here, right? To focus ourselves as to why we're doing what we're doing. A lot of it were people sharing painful stories. And I think right now is a moment that it's causing, again, painful stories. This is what happens when we don't fix the policy and we don't have people, first policy. And it's troubling times, but I think the silver lining here is that we realized how much we're depending on our communities, how much we need to depend on each other. I think being a progressive some days, I mean, real talk, it feels like you're screaming into a void, right? That it's like the country isn't going the way that it should, and there's a lot of people suffering. It does feel that way. But we need to be there for one another and remind ourselves of the victories, and however small they are. I think we need to look back and in 4 years, look at everything we've been able to do. Right. So I'm optimistic about the future, and I'm really glad to be in this fight alongside everyone that's here on this call and those, that are out there continuing to organize.
Amazing to hear from you, Jessica. Absolutely an inspiration. Thank you for everything that you've done, your team has done, the volunteers in RGV. The work that we do at the border is critical to the progressive voice in Texas. So thank you again for everything all of you have sacrificed to help us try to take that seat.
Oh, thank y'all. I mean, I think all the work that we're doing everywhere, is really important. So like I said, I'm just really blessed to be in this fight with everybody.
All right. And come that way, we're going to continue to fight. We're not going to give up. They're not going to beat us down. They might beat us down, but it's just a battle, right? A single battle, not the war. So thank you again. We have up next an amazing candidate coming out of Austin, running for something that's near and dear to my heart, ending mass incarceration, absolutely, changing the system, the justice system as we know it, air quotes, justice system in the United States is a major priority for our revolution. We've endorsed several DAs across the nation. One of our first DAs won in that 2017-2018 cycle. So I want to thank you, Jose. Can you hear me okay? Are you good? Are you able to speak?
Absolutely, Chrissy. It's good to be with you.
Awesome. We are so glad to hear you and have you here. We know, as Jessica stated, being a progressive in Texas can be tough, right?
Absolutely.
But we're tough people. Jose is running for the district attorney of Travis County in the Austin area. He's the co-executive director of Workers Defense Project in Austin, where he's worked centering his work on justice in communities of color, working families, immigrant families. He's also a former state and federal public defender and immigrant rights activist. Welcome, Jose. Thank you for being here.
Chrissy, it's good to be with you.
So Austin proudly carries this reputation of being progressive, the progressive city in Texas, right? And it's, the district you're running in, but it doesn't always roll progressive the entire way, right? Can you tell us about your race and why Austin needs new leadership in Travis County?
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I'm just really grateful to be here with the Our Revolution movement across the state. I'm just incredibly proud of the work that all of you do every single day to move this state forward. And in Travis County, as you said, we are the most progressive county in the state, right? Well, as we speak, in the most progressive county in the state, over 70% of people sitting in our jail have not been convicted of a crime. The overwhelming majority of them are sitting in our jail because they can't afford to pay bail. In the most progressive county in the state, 9% of our population is Black, but over 25% of the population of our jail is Black. In the most progressive county in the state, our district attorney doesn't take seriously serious crimes like sexual assault. And just to give you an example, in 2018, the district attorney's office prosecuted approximately 70 sexual assault cases, less than 10% of all the cases brought forward by local law enforcement, and over 2,700 drug cases. Those are the current priorities of the district attorney's office in Travis County, and they don't match up with the priorities and the values of the people who live in Travis County. And that's why on election day, the people came out and sent a resounding message that they are ready for reform and they're ready for change. And we're excited to be one step closer to deliver that change on July 14th.
That's amazing to hear, Jose, and thank you for what you're doing to help spread that progressive message in Austin. Like, we say progressive, but do we mean bold progressive, right? That's the difference. Can you tell us a little bit about the intersectionality between criminal justice reform and other issues like housing security, a living wage, healthcare, and how you'll work on that as DA in Austin?
Yeah, absolutely. So, for the last 40 years in this country, if not more, we have been sold this bill of goods that what public safety is locking up working class people. That what public safety is locking up people of color. We have been told that if we just lock up enough working class people and enough people of color, that will make us safe. But we know that that's not true. We know it in our hearts. We know it because we see it every day, and we know it because the data tells us it's not true. What makes us safe is when people have a place to live. What makes us safe is when people have a good job and they can support their families and put food on the table and send their kids to good schools. That is what makes us safe. That's what public safety is. Public safety is stability. Housing, education, access to healthcare, those aren't intersectional issues. Those issues are at the core of what public safety is and should be. And so it is time that we have a criminal legal system that puts making sure crime doesn't happen above punishing people who are failed and let down by our system every single day. So those issues are at the heart of what it takes to build safe communities.
I mean, we've had several DAs across the nation with Our Revolution discuss exactly what you're talking about, which is this true justice, right? And justice for who? Who is this, right, system built for? And so it's up to us, each one of us, to continue that work. I know that you have a community of organizers around you, progressives, bold progressives fighting for you. So we thank you for everyone that's doing that work on your team, as well as your volunteers and organizers. We know that I see that there's a pledge to create a community task force. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, the reason that I'm running to be district attorney in the first place is because I believe and I have seen that regular people know best what change they need in their own lives and are best positioned to make that change. As you said, I currently lead an organization called Workers' Defense Project, and we work with and organize working class people, predominantly undocumented working class people. And I have seen the incredible progress that our members have made over the last several months and over the last several years. What they have taught me is the power that regular people have to change their own communities, to change the state, and most certainly to change our criminal legal system. So we are not running to save people. We are running to empower people. And I know that when we do, we're going to have a criminal legal system that lifts up working class people, that lifts up people of color, not one that locks them up. So the policy that you articulated is just the tip of the iceberg of the ways that we want to put regular people in control of their own legal system. We know that we are all smart enough and capable to do it, and we know we'll have better outcomes when people are in control. So we have a very detailed set of policies that people can check out at Jose4da.com. It doesn't rhyme so well when you say Jose, but Jose4da. And you can see all of the policies and the way that we're going to put people in the driver's seat and give them control of their own criminal legal system.
Well, Jose, hearing you speak, makes me think of my favorite chant. When we say whose revolution, we mean our revolution. And you are part of that, man. We appreciate the work that you're doing. Thank you for your voice and for standing up for, those people who are most harmed by our system. And I hope every single person on this call tells their friends and family. We're going to talk a little bit more about the show, but we have to vote. We must vote in this runoff election. So please make sure that you tell your friends and family in Austin, across the state of Texas. If you know someone in Austin, in Jose's district, go to his website. You can go to ourrevolutiontx.com also to find more information about his district. So thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
Are there any questions you want to highlight, Clayton, in the chat for Jose?
That's nothing but love and support.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much. So up next, we have another amazing progressive on the call tonight. We're so lucky to have her running here in Texas. Her name is Penny Shaw. Penny Shaw is running for the Texas House of Representatives in District 148. She is a civil litigation lawyer and has represented hundreds of clients to help protect their rights, help pass progressive legislation at the as a congressional legislative advocate. Welcome, Penny.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, our community. Thank all of you.
So, Penny, we know it can be tough to run as a candidate in Texas as a progressive, right? We're going to go over a few questions. And if people have questions for Penny, some of these down ballot races almost always get ignored. We get excited about the federal congressional seats, and sometimes we don't pay enough attention to our local champions. So thank you, Penny, for running.
Thank you for always being supportive. Thank you.
Funding for education and instability of our schools is a big issue for you. And we are concerned about the state as well as corporate America taking over the schools. Can you tell us a little bit about your vision for education and what you hope to accomplish given the situation with charter schools and vouchers?
Yes. Before I jump into that, I just wanted to say Jessica and Jose were amazing, so encouraging to hear about both of their experiences and their paths so far. And I want to say that I totally agree with both of them when they say we need to elect progressives, and that's the way we're going to see the change that we need, and that's change for the people. We have a government that works. The problem is it works for some people instead of all people, and that's what we're here to fight for and to change. So yeah, education is on everybody's mind. It's a huge issue, and this pandemic has magnified so many things about it. The disparity, the lack of access for some communities as opposed to others in a time when the schools have closed down, where teachers are displaced and scrambling to try to figure out how to put an educational program together on the fly for kids who are at home right now. And you can just imagine parents as well. trying to figure out how to work and have their kids at home and be the homeschool teacher. So lots of challenges. A couple of things. Trump just proposed recently a $5.6 billion cut in education. This is the 5th year in a row. And Betsy DeVos is right behind it, supporting the cuts. That's going to have a huge impact because we know that our funding is heavily reliant on federal funds. We have per student funding in public schools that has not increased in over a decade. And at the same time, we have charter enrollment that's incentivized by about $1,500 in per student funding. So we're starving public education, and at the same time, there's the incentivizing of this enrollment into charter schools. You know, charter schools have been around a long time. They have their place, but our public community schools, it's not a solution to talk about privatization or to replace them with charters. We saw that happen in New Orleans, and it basically happened after Katrina, and maybe it was an opportune moment to do that. It hasn't improved the outcomes at all, and we see it as well in New Jersey. So that's not the solution that we need. We need our schools to be funded. We need our teachers to be, there's been an underinvestment in education for so many years. We need fierce fighting for that. The last session, HB3 was a stopgap measure to provide funding solutions, but it wasn't a permanent solution. And coupled with that were the rev caps. It went from 8% down to 3.5. So that was a huge source of funding that was reduced. So this is going to be a huge issue in the next session. There's going to have to be solutions found to save, protect our community public schools. And of course, with COVID on top of that, there's going to have to be revised models proposed, models of operation. We don't know what that's going to look like, but whatever it looks like, we need to have fierce advocates there fighting to make sure that whatever the solution looks like, whether it's, a hybrid of students partially virtual school, partially on campus, or whether it's alternating schedules so that you have the social distancing. We just don't know what it's going to look like, but whatever it does look like, we need to be fiercely fighting for funding that new model, whatever it does look like. And that's going to be a lot of conversation that's going on. Some of the other remedies could be reducing recapture to make that funding stay local. Of course, fully funding existing community public schools before any new charters are authorized to be open or funded. Again, the starvation of public education, or moving public tax dollars to privately run institutions, it hurts our students, it hurts our teachers. It's competing for the same pot of dollars. So, we just have to fiercely advocate for that. Another thing is joining. We have some senior delegates that are champions for public education. And of course, the more progressives we get and the more people who are really about our communities and about people and our children and investing in them, we will build that delegation. Right now, we have people like Armando Wally and Sylvia Garcia, who have always been champions of public education. So joining in anything that they have already pushed for that will come up again. Because a lot of these bills have come up. It's just that we've been on the defense. And again, the more progressives we elect, the more leverage we have to make sure that these programs get passed and funded. Was there a second part to that question?
There was not. So part of the issue that we're running in as far as the Houston community, that the reports we get back are that not just the schools, but there's a huge issue, right, with environmental contamination, including environmental contamination in the schools, right? Having schools that are not safe. The water is not safe. People are concerned about lead poisoning in older schools with lead pipes, as well as lead paint. Can you talk a little bit about that, your environmental concerns, as well as community cleanup in the Houston area?
Sure. When we're talking about just the school component of it, and before we get fully off the topic of charters, I do want to mention that a lot of the people that are listening may already know this. But the opponent in this race is Anna Eastman, and she served on HISD before. So when you talk about this component of contamination in school, a lot of that has to do with funding and the equity in school bonds and where that goes and what it goes to remediate and address. Well, first, I want to say that she's taken over $143,000 in charter interest money. Betsy DeVos's foundation has called her a champion for school choice, and she endorsed her and heavily funded her in the primary. But back to your question, looking at her voting record at HISD, which it's a lot to dig through, but it's very revealing. She voted down school teacher raises, raises for librarians to keep 3-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 6, 7-year-olds in suspension instead of finding some kind of rehabilitative program for them. She was pro cutting school funding. So these are things that are very revealing about her. But when there was a major bond passed during that time, and there was a big conversation about having an equity component to that bond so that the schools that needed it, we could make sure that that bond, that money went to address the needs of the school, whether it meant rebuilding or repairing pipes or making sure that it was environmentally safe for the children and teachers and staff. And that she was not agreeable to that. I think having equity when we're talking about spending tax dollars, I think that's huge, and we should demand that.
Wow.
Okay, go ahead.
Penny, just hearing from you, makes me want to get on the phones and make some phone calls for you. We got to turn out some voters for you, right?
Yes.
It is so good to have you on the call. Clayton, do we have any questions that we need to highlight for Penny before she leaves?
I mean, just a bunch of love and support. Very supportive crowd today.
Penny, do you have any things you want to address specifically, maybe on your website, regarding there was a comment about students with disabilities in the Houston area and what you can do in the Texas House to help with that issue?
It's my understanding too that was another area that she was a proponent of cutting funding for special needs students. And of course, when we talk about funding for public community schools, we're talking about, and one of the big reasons that we need to be champions for that, and we are, is because one of the big differences between public community schools and charter schools, because some people will say, oh, charter schools are public schools, is that public community schools have open enrollment. They accept everyone in their community. Everyone that's in that jurisdiction gets to go to that school. When it comes to charters, you don't have that same benefit. So there can be cherry pick and choose. And of course, that's a huge discrimination against, for example, special needs students. And so we need to make sure that there's adequate per student funding, whether that's a special needs student or whether that's another kind of student. But for all students, we need to be advocating for adequate funding for all of them. We didn't get to talk a lot about the environmental regulations, but just know that our industry is underregulated. Texas has a history of, preferring industry over health and human life. And that's just another area that we really need to advocate for. I know my time's up, but I do want to say that, with COVID going on, we're doing our fundraising as much as we can. We have a great team of volunteers that's so committed and dedicated, but we can always use more. The work is remote. It doesn't matter where you're located. You can be in, you can be in Utah if you want to be, but we can use your help as all the candidates can. So please go to voteforpenny.com. And if you can donate, please. But if you want to join us and volunteer, that would be awesome. You heard about the opponent's funding and where it's coming from. We know it's adverse to people, to students, to children. So just thank you very much. And I'm so honored to be endorsed by our revolution.
Thank you so much, Penny, for being on the call tonight. We appreciate all the work that you're doing. an amazing team. If you guys want to find all of our endorsed candidates, we have 9 endorsed candidates in the Texas runoff. You can go to ourrevolutiontx.com to find out more. It'll have all of their donation links, their website links, as well as any information that you might want to find about them. So thank you, Penny, again, and we appreciate you joining us tonight.
You're welcome.
So our next guest is someone, I'm excited to have on the call tonight. She has a passion for something that's often ignored in Texas. And why do we emphasize this at Our Revolution Texas? It's because many of you know we ran the Healthy Texas Act campaign, House Bill 4127, over the past year, presented it in the legislative cycle and had a committee hearing on that. We were the only state in the nation that we know of that had a committee hearing on healthcare for all as a state, given the Healthy Texas Act. And so what most people don't know is that the county commissioners are in control of the county funding for the county public hospitals. And so that's why it's important. That's just one reason. There are many reasons, but that is one reason why it's so important to have progressives running for county commissioner, and why we as local activists and organizers need to get behind our progressive candidates. Diana, welcome.
Hello, thanks for having me. And it feels so good to be out of sweatpants and like dress up a little bit. I'm running for Harris County Commissioner Court, and I'm a lifelong educator, and I started to just wake up after November 2016 to jump into action. So I was getting out the vote, connecting with local grassroots organizations, and really building community. And I saw that Precinct 3 had an opportunity. We've had the same representation since I was 14 years old, over 30 years of the same person in office. And so I realized that that position has a great amount of potential to make change for over 1 million people in Precinct 3 when it comes to providing services, whether it be medical care, education, access to transportation. And in light of the COVID-19 crisis, it's even more imperative to have somebody there who's going to be looking at the interest of working families and making sure that we're doing everything to provide the support and the services that are needed right now.
That is awesome, Diana. Thank you for running, and thank you for telling us a little bit about what county commissioners do to influence their counties. We know how powerful the county commissioner seats are, and they're often an ignored race in Texas, right? So as progressives, we need to become more educated and also more involved at the county level. Can you tell us, Diana, specifically, what are some things you would focus on, key priorities, if you were elected into office?
Absolutely. So people have really responded to the platform. We're running a grassroots campaign. It's all about community. And our top priority is making sure that we start a climate crisis plan for the county. The city has one in Houston, but as a county, we need to be progressive and make sure that we have short-term and long-term plans to address flooding and other issues and infrastructure to make sure that we're responding to the climate crisis problem. It's not something that we can just leave to chance and ignore anymore. The next thing is making sure that we're providing those services and looking at barriers. So the predecessor has built some beautiful parks, but when it comes to building clinics or providing Head Starts or looking at other services that need to be distributed equally in the precinct, which is growing, that hasn't been done. So I want to make sure that we're looking at that in a transparent way, meaning that I have pledged not to take any contributions from possible vendors to the county. That's critical when you want to make sure that you're beholden to the people of the community and not outside interests, because that's how things get cloudy when you have control over such a large budget. you get lost in all of that. You got to focus on what the people need and listening to the people.
Wow, that's amazing to hear, Diana, putting the people first over profits, right? Even profiting as a candidate, right? Running for office. So thank you for taking a strong progressive stance on that. We really genuinely appreciate that. We know that, you know, there's so much work to be done in your district, and we appreciate you running. Again, if you want to find out more about Diana, or find her website, as well as information on how you can volunteer to help turn out the vote for the July 14th runoff, go to ourrevolutiontx.com to our endorsements page. Are there any questions that you see in the Q&A section, Clayton, for Diana?
It's a lot of excitement for Diana to be working with Linda Hidalgo soon.
Yes. Can I just add that, you know, despite being very, like, people power, our average donation of about $45, we were able to beat and be the top vote getter in the primary with someone who has oodles and oodles of money, but very much establishment. And so what that means is that there's a lot of passion in this campaign. People are really excited for what we're standing for, but you know, those contributions, even if it's $5, really do make a huge difference in voter outreach. So I appreciate the support.
Thank you so much, Diana. We also have, I'll just briefly mention, we have another commissioner seat being run in your district, as well as a few others, but Scott Fulis is running for drainage commissioner in your area. And many of the things that you guys talk about as far as organizing, not just for environmental justice, but racial justice, and organizing education justice, they just all come together. And unless we have a progressive in every one of those seats, we will not be the change that we hope to be. So thank you, Diana, again.
Thank you so much for having me.
So we're going to move really quick to the action portion of our call, right? This is the portion where we ask our revolution activists to step up and help us build the power across Texas. Our revolution works to build a network of people, powerful progressives, as well as building the infrastructure to help not just candidates win their elections, but win on the issues once they're in office. So we need to push that information out to the great people of Texas, and we'll have that opportunity this primary election runoff cycle. Again, that primary runoff election is happening July 14th, and we're going to get a little bit more into that in just a few minutes. But again, building that power, every phone call you make, every text you send, every meeting you attend, every time you send a donation to a candidate, you are building that power and building that progressive message. So please stay tuned. We really quickly want to go into the next segment, which, you know, we build power not just through candidates, not just through elections, but also the work that we do individually. And one of the things that you can do as an activist and organizer is to make sure you not just vote, but educate about the vote, right? We want our progressive list to be the most educated about voting in Texas. As many of you know, Texas now will allow, for the time being, vote by mail. And to speak on that issue, we have Mr. Jose Garza. Jose, are you available?
Absolutely am.
Awesome. Can you tell us a little bit about the vote by mail updates and what's going on in Texas around that issue?
Absolutely. This has been a long, winding, confusing road. And so I'm going to try to just walk through the steps that have taken place so far. I also want to start by reminding people that there are several ways that a person can be eligible to vote by mail. The most common is that people who are 65 and older are eligible to vote by mail, automatically, regardless. People who are not going to be in the place where they are registered to vote during the voting window, early vote, and on election day, you know, we commonly refer to that as absentee voting, are eligible to vote by mail. And then the category that we're going to be talking about are people who are unable to vote in person because of disability. So just a quick recap, about a month and a half ago, the state Democratic Party, joined by advocates across the state, sued the state of Texas and asked that the courts rule that the current legal definition of disability included people who do not have immunity to COVID-19 and therefore risk serious health problems and injury by voting in person. The state district court sitting in Travis County, Judge Sulak, agreed with the Democratic Party and the other plaintiffs and enjoined the state of Texas and county election officials from rejecting people who claim disability because they don't have immunity to COVID-19. The Attorney General appealed that case to the Court of Appeals, and the Attorney General asked the Court of Appeals to put that ruling on hold while the issue was decided. The Court of Appeals let the district court ruling stand, and I believe just last week, the Texas Supreme Court stepped in and overruled the district court and said, no, you are not allowed to vote by mail simply because you don't have immunity to COVID-19. Around about the same time, the same parties went into federal district court in San Antonio, Texas, in the Western District of Texas, and filed a federal lawsuit. And just within the last couple of days, the federal district judge, Judge Berry, ruled that, in fact, people can vote by mail. And so as we sit here tonight at 8:10, the courts have said that if you do not have immunity to COVID-19, and I don't think any of us know whether or not we do, that you are eligible to check the disability box and send in an application to receive a mail-in ballot.
That is amazing news, Jose. We know many states around the nation that are Democratic have automatic voter registration as well as automatic mail-in ballots. And that is true democracy, one person, one vote, right? So that should be our aim as far as progressives, to make sure we press on that measure. And given the extreme circumstances of COVID-19, it's so important. If we could go to the next slide, you'll see that we have a quick graphic on your vote by mail dates that you need to pay attention to. The last day to apply for a ballot by mail is July 2nd. We genuinely ask people to don't wait till that last day. Send in your application for ballot by mail. July 1st is what I encourage people to send their ballot by mail application in. The state will begin dropping ballots in the mail, meaning people will have ballots in their hand to vote with. They'll start sending those out July 2nd. So make sure that you apply for your ballot by mail so that you receive it in time and you can return it by the July 14th primary election date. You can mail it back at any time, and postage is included in that. But you need to make sure that those people that get their ballot, maybe they get it a little late or they misplace it or whatever, there are accommodations for that. You can also, on the very last day of election day or during early voting, you can return your ballot by mail in person to an election polling location. But I encourage everyone, please apply for ballot by mail, not just for the safety of yourself, but the safety of your family, and make sure that you receive your ballot in the mail and that it is returned accordingly. And we'll wait to hear from the courts, right, Jose?
Yeah, and if I could, there's, Scott raises a good question in the chat that we should address. And I think all of this has been very confusing. And so just to be clear, it is true that the state court decision allowing people to check eligibility and vote by mail was stayed by the Texas Supreme Court. But within the last couple of days, a federal court, that doesn't give a damn what the Texas Supreme Court has to say, agreed with the plaintiffs and said that people are currently eligible to vote by mail by checking disability if they do not have immunity to COVID-19. Again, we should be very transparent that this situation is precarious. This federal court decision will likely go up to the Fifth Circuit, which has been no friend to working people, has been no friend to people of color, has been no friend to democracy. And so, we can all guess about what the Fifth Circuit will do. And it looks like we've got maybe breaking news in the chat. I am not aware of any Fifth Circuit decision, just to directly answer the question in the chat. And it's also just an important point to remind people that if you are 65 and older, what's happening in the courts has no bearing on you. You are eligible to vote by mail. These dates matter for you. If you are a student who was displaced because of COVID-19, but you go to the University of Texas or you go to the University of Houston and you were displaced and you're now living back at your folks' home, so you won't be in attendance, you won't be in your county where you're registered to vote, the court has no bearing on you. You can vote absentee, vote by mail.
So just to clarify, Jose, right now, as the court ruling that we understand it to be right now, it is every Texan's right. If they do not have immunity to COVID-19, it is their right to vote by mail right now at this moment.
There are some comments in the chat that suggest that the Fifth Circuit has stated. I have not seen that news, but this is developing day by day. So it looks like we've got a new link there that says the Fifth Circuit has stated.
Joel Mayer has posted a link from the Texas Tribune discussing vote by mail expansion in Texas. What the state intends to do as far as the law is concerned. I think that we'll just continue following this story. And you, as a progressive, as a voter, you need to make what choice is right for you, given your safety and your family, and exercising that right to vote here in Texas. And we'll see him in court, right, Jose?
That's right. I also just want to point out, I think it's, there's also a comment in the chat that suggests that it may be good to check with your county clerk, your county elections official. What we understand is that normally the way the process works is that a person would check disability or some other eligibility, and that typically election officials, they don't do an investigation as to what your disability is or as to whether or not you really aren't going to be at home because you're on vacation. So it may be important to check with your clerk. There have been several points during the last couple of weeks where it was legal to request this kind of ballot and to vote by mail. And so people should be safe.
Awesome. So I know we're crunching time here a little. Thank you, Jose, for that update and that discussion on vote by mail. Links are in the chat to apply for a ballot by mail as this court decisions are being made. We want to quickly go to the next slide. We are working to organize across the state, not just for ballot by mail, but to turn out the vote for the July 14th election and educate voters about this election. This may be one of the lowest voter turnout elections in the state. So it is our job as progressives to make sure our fellow progressives are turning out for this primary runoff so that our candidates can be, and be the most progressive going into November. So please keep note of that. You can find out more on our website. If we can go to the next slide really quickly, we're asking everyone to pledge to make calls for our candidates. When you make calls for our candidates, you're not calling the general public. You're not calling just random people that live in their district. You are calling fellow progressives. And we, Clayton has said this in other calls, but Mike Siegel, for instance, we would say 50% of progressives in his district don't know that he's running. They don't even realize there's a runoff happening. So it's important that we volunteer to make these calls. We do those Thursday evenings at 5:30 p.m. And we need a minimum of 5 people to volunteer to use the Bernie dialer to make those calls in those different districts. So please volunteer if you can. You can go to Our Revolution. The Mobilize link is, you can go to ourrevolutiontx.com/events to find the Mobilize links and volunteer for those events. We'll be doing that now through the July 14th runoff. If we can go to the next slide, Clayton. We want you guys to know that there is an upcoming convention. You know, we just had a major voting block that happened, just closed. Well, the final last day to vote was Tuesday at 5 p.m. And we had so many Bernies win. There's a whole list of Bernies. We're going to send out that information after this call. But so many Bernies won in committees. They are running for national delegate. Clayton, can you tell us a little bit about the convention and what we can expect coming up?
Sure thing. So our convention is going to be Monday, June 1st, 2020. Now in 2018, which you can see some of the photos from that, we had one of the largest conventions, or largest caucuses, I mean, at the convention. We're going to be doing the same. We're getting a very exciting panel set up. We have the Bernie co-chairs are going to be attending. We're very excited. And we are also working on some other folks who should be very exciting once we release their names. It's going to be a huge excitement. So again, that will be Monday, June 1st at 6 p.m. The link is in the chat, and you can also just search on Facebook and find us there.
Yeah, so we'll be updating you guys now through the convention. The convention is June 1st through, it's that first week of June through the 6th. Events will be happening digitally throughout the week, and that will be ORTX's Digital Caucus at the Texas Democratic Party Convention, our second caucus as Our Revolution. We're so excited to be hosting that. If we could go to the next slide, you'll see that this is just a basic list of the Senate District Executive Committee seats through the state of Texas. We'll be sending out our win list by SD, as well as identified OR members, identified Bernie supporters, people who pledged to be Bernie supporters in the convention. And Clayton, do you want to tell us about upcoming calls to action this week?
Sure thing. So we have some very exciting calls. Of course, our next monthly call, third Thursday, we have our panel all set up. We'll be releasing that information shortly. We also have our national member call coming up June 26th. That is also Thursday. Our weekly phone banks are there, 5:30 every single Thursday. Great team of folks. We really make it fun and all that good stuff. And of course, the Monday night call every Monday. This is for our leaders. So this is for, you know, growing our leadership base throughout the nation. So you'll be connected with people from California, from Washington, from New York, from Florida, from everywhere. So those calls are really exciting. We always have really fantastic speakers. And you just, if you want to find any of these, just go to mobilize.us/ourrevolution. You can find all of this information there.
Awesome. So that's some of the work that we're doing. We'll be sending texts out across the state of Texas. Many of you receive those texts. We'll be doing phone banking through the Bernie dialer. You can go to ourrevolutiontx.com/calls to go to that service. You can also find out more on our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram. And Clayton, do you want to close us out? I know our membership numbers are up in Texas. Can we talk a little bit about that?
Sure thing. So we are a membership-based organization, and we're really powered by the people. We're powered by folks like y'all. So, you know, that helps Chrissy and I really spend our time to really organize and build these groups. So we're building, for instance, regional virtual calls. We had one in Houston, really turned out great. We had one in Tyler, Texas, also really fantastic call. We're building them out in Beaumont and West Texas. We're going to be building them out in the Valley, San Antonio, Austin, Dallas. We're going to be having all of these virtual calls, and they're based, and we can do this because of folks like y'all. So we really do encourage everyone to get involved, to go to ourrevolutiontx.com/membership. We really do need y'all to become a member. You know, I'm a member. I chip in $5 a month towards Our Revolution Texas, and that really helps us out. You know, we're not funded by billionaires, and they wouldn't give us their money anyway, and we wouldn't accept it anyway. So just really join me, join Christy, join the hundreds of supporters we have, the hundreds of members, help empower our movement so that we can build true progressive power by focusing on this, all the places in Texas, because we cannot just flip the Texas triangle. We have to go we have to go to places like San Angelo, to Lubbock, to Tyler. We have to build out in the rural areas. And that is what our revolution's here to do. And that is exactly what we've been doing and what we will continue to do until Texas turns blue. And even when it does turn blue, we'll still be at it.
So I don't have the link to the spreadsheet, but I want you guys to know we've had an amazing group, including Scott Fulis out of our Houston chapter and a few other people helping across the state to build our Bernie list, to build our Revolution list, to make sure that the delegates are recognized that ran for committee and are running for national delegate slots. We will get that information to you in your email. We're running just a little bit over time. Make sure you add info@ourrevolutiontx.com to your contacts list to make sure that our emails do not go into spam during this important organizing time now through the convention and through the general election in November. We like to close our calls. If everyone that's on the call could unmute their mic and do our chant that we end. We usually do this live, but we are not in person, so we're gonna do it digitally. At Our Revolution, we like to say that when we organize, Clayton, if you could unmute the panelists for me really quick. We're getting a little bit of feedback, but we'll say, when we organize, we win. And this revolution, it's our revolution. Thank you to everyone who joined us tonight. And we will see you guys soon. Sign up to our next call so we can make sure that we continue this work. We'll have other runoff candidates join us for that next call in June. And in preparation for the July primary runoff, tell all your friends and family to make sure that they vote this primary runoff. Make sure that they educate themselves about the people that are running. And most importantly, if you live in a district with one of our 9 endorsed Our Revolution candidates, that we turn out the vote for them, that we are the power behind the movement. We'll see you guys soon. And hopefully in a regional call soon, right, Clayton?
Oh, yeah.
All right, y'all have a good night. Thanks again, everyone.
Good night.
Thanks, everyone.